I'd anticipate, I'm not going to make market predictions, but 200,000 is not out of the question. $1 million per Bitcoin is not out of the question. So these are the numbers, and I feel very confident and comfortable mentioning these numbers, because if you have a $2 trillion asset that is scarce, that is decentralized, that is using 256 secure hash algorithm like crypto technology that was based in the Department of Defense in the 1960s, that is like unbreakable, right? Then I think that that's a pretty solid risk-reward asset. So at the end of the day, as we say in the Army, the bottom line up front is that Bitcoin, I would argue, at Exponential Advisors and other certified financial planners that are Bitcoin-friendly and Bitcoin-focused would say the same, if not take it further.
Hey there, and welcome to Money and You. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. My search for more fulfilling work led me to career and business coaching, where I stumbled upon a game-changing discovery. Money issues often start with our mindset and habits. You see, our relationship with money is the key to overcoming those frustrating financial obstacles. As an entrepreneur, coach, and problem solver, I'm passionate about helping you create a great relationship with money. Because, turns out, that's the foundation for a limit-free life. Each week on Money and You, I speak with amazing guests about all things money, mindset, practical tips, and everything in between. We're here to give you new insights, education, and empowerment so money can be one of your favorite relationships. So join us for some lively conversations, and let's transform your financial life together. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Money and You Show. This is a really interesting episode. Many facets to this one. We're going to speak with our guest who is with us today. Again, I'm so psyched that we have guests coming into the studio. That's great. And he has come in from Texas, and we are going to talk about many things. It's going to be a surprising show. So there are a few little unexpected aspects to today's show. So I'm going to introduce you to our guest first, and this is Joshua Brooks. Joshua Brooks, CFP, is the founder of Exponential Advisors LLC, a forward-thinking financial planning firm based in Weatherford, Texas. As a certified financial planner professional with over a decade of experience in personal finance, Joshua is passionate about empowering clients to achieve financial freedom and live their best lives. His mission is to provide comprehensive, innovative financial solutions with a personal touch, integrating cutting-edge tools like digital assets and AI-driven insights into traditional financial planning strategies. Joshua's professional journey is profoundly shaped by his 20-plus years in service in the United States Army, where he served in roles ranging from infantry soldier to chaplain. His unique perspective as an Army veteran drives his commitment to serving fellow veterans and their families. Whether guiding clients through military benefits, optimization, investment planning, or legacy strategies, Joshua understands the complexities and opportunities of navigating life during and after the military. So Joshua also holds a bachelor's in communication studies from Texas Christian University and is pursuing ongoing education in financial technology and wealth management trends. His expertise spans various financial services, including retirement, tax-efficient investing, estate planning, and cryptocurrency integration. A devoted family man, Joshua resides in Weatherford with his wife, Stephanie, and their 4 children. He values faith, transparency, humility, and impact in his personal and professional life. When not working with clients, Joshua enjoys reading the Bible, freestyle rapping, playing golf, and spending quality time with his family. His vision for Exponential Advisors LLC is clear: to deliver an elite client experience that transforms lives, harnesses innovation, and builds long-term wealth. Ready to start your financial journey? You can do so right here on the Money and You Show with Joshua and I having a conversation. So Joshua, welcome.
Hey, Michelle. Great to be here with you.
It's great to have you here, and thank you for coming into the studio. You came a long way. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm super excited to talk to you because you have a lot of very interesting things to talk about. I want you to just tell the audience, you just mentioned kind of who your avatar is in terms of clients, and I'd love for you to share that with the audience because it's unique.
Yeah, it really is. And so thinking about the clients we serve and as our firm grows, the client avatars are Army veterans and that's a very specific niche. So we're okay taking, if you're a Navy sailor or an Air Force person, we're okay. That's okay too. You're welcome. And busy mommies, because a Fidelity recent research report indicates that women are controlling more of the household finances, making more influential decisions in that space, and that has been trending upward for a while now. And then also Christian leaders, with my background and ministry and spiritual leadership. And so those are the three primary client avatars that we look to serve at Exponential Advisors.
You know, I love that, and thank you for doing that work. That's really quite impressive. And it's I love the idea of really sort of selecting particular niches. It's the exact opposite of what I did when I started my business, which was trying to help everybody with too many things. So it's super smart, I think, because you can really get to know the people that you're serving and what's going on in their heads. And so to that point, you probably have a lot of insight into their relationship with money. And those particular groups of people, I would think, would have some complicated relationships with money, particularly people like chaplains or, people who are really out to serve versus, their goal in life is obviously not to make as much money as possible. So what are you seeing in terms of helping people build wealth when their occupations or the busy mommies too, they're dedicated to their families. So, all of these people, money is not their primary goal.
Mm-hmm. Let's tackle those three briefly. And as you know, everybody is a one-of-a-kind creature. Everybody has their own unique circumstances and strengths and limitations. And so let me pause before that, because in the bio that you were reading, Michelle, I forgot to mention, and I think you read it, that I might have to, drop some freestyle bars as well. So not to mention the other things. I know we've got a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of...
In the Army, we don't just come, we come from the side. And so you're unexpected and you're like, oh man, they just blew us up. We had no idea that they were coming. Like, who's this white guy, chaplain, financial advisor? And he's going to rap on my podcast. But you'll have to check out a couple of the other shows that I've done recently.
Well, feel free. You're here in studio. Yeah. You can even dance for that matter.
Yeah, we'll get Tony to dial up in the West Coast flavor of California, maybe a Tupac instrumental, or you can take us back, Tony, with a mainstream rap instrumental off YouTube or something. Should be fun. So let's talk about Army veterans, because I've spent 21 years and counting with the Army population. Yes, there are a bunch of sweaty dudes and females, and there's gross bathrooms. And so usually money is not always on the top of that priority. And you see active duty, you see these typical scenarios where they're on active duty and they have to learn in the school of hard knocks. And so whether that's an early marriage to get the housing allowance, the basic allowance for housing, or they buy a new Chevy Camaro or one of those Dodge. What do you call those Dodge car, the Chargers that go real fast?
Yeah.
And then they wrap the Charger around a light pole after their trip to their recreational activities, on Saturday night that we won't mention on this family-friendly podcast. And so Army veterans have a tendency, and again, there's people who manage their money really well, right? And those are usually the senior NCOs and the officers. And that brings up the question that is often discussed is, what is the relationship between financial literacy and financial action? And it also brings up those emotions and kind of that Morgan household, being responsible with your money and all that stuff. So it's really complicated with Army personnel, but I would argue that generally they don't do well. They don't optimize their finances. Okay. So that's my take on the Army veterans and kind of what I've experienced.
Yeah. And the military, like most organizations, probably doesn't do a lot to teach financial literacy. I am guessing. I could be wrong.
Well, they try.
Okay.
They try. But sometimes you can throw a lot of programs and money and dollars because there are personal financial counselors in Grand Prairie, Texas. We're at the Grand Prairie Armed Forces Reserve Center where I'm at, and she's awesome, and she could help the soldiers but they're so focused on, and so here's, for the listeners out there, I want to help you understand kind of the nature of Army service. So for active duty, you get your pay and your meals and your housing, whether it's in the barracks or off post. And so you work 365, 24/7. But for the reserve component, and that comprises the Army Reserve and the National Guard, you are a citizen soldier. So you work 1 weekend each month, and you do your 2 weeks of active training. And then you have your civilian job. And so that's where the big conflict occurs, where you're trying to work for your civilian employer, but then you also have duty, like to Uncle Sam. And so if you're working at a restaurant or something and your schedule conflicts with your duty responsibilities, what do you think is going to trump out there, you know? And then, so that's challenging for those soldiers.
Yeah, for sure. And they tend to come in pretty young, I would think. I mean, the ones I know, and in after high school. And so probably, just like for me when I started my first corporate job, I mean, 40 seems like a billion years away, you know? So you're not thinking about what maybe you should be doing now to help you out for later. But,
so that's the client avatar for the Army veterans.
Okay, very cool. So, all right, why don't you just tell us, I mean, I read the bio, but why don't you tell us just in your own words, you know, what you do, how you help people, and what you love the most about it?
Yeah, so Exponential Advisors, we exist to provide those transformative solutions by doing comprehensive financial planning. So as you mentioned in the bio, certified financial planner, and I take that very seriously. There's now over 100,000 certified financial planners.
Wow.
And so that includes all domains of the financial planning process. And so there's an evolution in the financial services industry where, as Penny Pennington, she says, as the managing partner at Edward Jones, it's human-centered, complete wealth management is how she describes it. So it's no longer pushing products or here's this great investment that's going to make you, you know.
And, you know, I don't mean to interrupt, but as you were talking, I think a lot of people don't even know that there's a difference between a financial advisor and a certified financial planner. So maybe you can just enlighten people a little on that.
Yeah, so there are people who hold themselves out in the financial advising world, and they can do really good work for you, and they can serve you, and they can likely have their licenses of Series 7, or they call it now the SIE, and in the state, the Series 63, and they do good work. But the difference in the CFP credential, which is considered the gold standard in the financial services industry, is that you have to pass 4 parts. And so that is the education, that is the experience, that is the ethics, and that is the exam, right? Okay. And so with the education, it's approximately 2 years, I think, like a college degree and having finance work, like if you have a business minor, et cetera. And then the ethics component, like you can't have a felony in financial crime. That's kind of a no, as we say in the Army, that's a no-go. You are a no-go at the station. Please go back and figure something else out. And then with your experience, so your education, your experience is the 2 years. Your education, I don't know that. It's been a minute since I did it in 2019, 20. And then your exam, which generally has like a 60% pass rate. It is not an easy test, like a 6-hour test.
Quite difficult.
Then you are board certified to be a certified financial planner, and you have to do your continuing education and continue to do ethical, good planning. And on top of that, they pushed the new pro bono financial planning initiative, where it's helping people who are less fortunate, people who are marginalized in the community. And yes, maybe it's virtue signaling a little bit or whatever, but I think that's a good initiative.
I didn't know that. That's a great initiative. So, yeah. And how do people, well, we can go back to that because they can probably contact you for whatever help. But, and I mean, there's helping people to choose investments, but there's also the planning piece, I guess, is what I was trying to get at, is this overall plan is what drives everything else. So you help them with that, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this could be 10 podcasts right here. So you want to talk about the financial planning process. But to start off, just to hit the high points in the domains, like there are the fundamentals of financial planning, Michelle. There's the insurance planning, the investment planning, the retirement planning, the tax planning, and the estate planning. And in all of those domains, there are a number of sections, and then you have the subsections and categories. So there is a planning process where just starting out with, say, insurance, you're going to need to ask a decent amount of questions to make sure, and they all interconnect. So if one thing changes, that might impact the estate plan or your taxes.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. And so when you're dealing with people, I mean, that sounds overwhelming in itself to a potential client, I think.
And to CFP personnel too as well.
But so how do you kind of get somebody on this path, especially people in the categories that you serve?
Yeah.
How do you get them interested, actually?
Yeah. So you mean like how do we, in the prospecting process or obtain new clients, or how to get them to embrace the financial planning process?
There you go.
Yeah. So that's the fun part. So again, with my background and Fidelity Investments for 4 years as a financial rep, that was more about customer service, account service, and maintenance, talking to clients about their investments and ETFs and mutual funds. And then I said, well, I want to be more client-facing. So I went to Edward Jones, and that was in 2020.
Okay.
So I think we all know about that period and building a business in that time frame. And so as you think about the financial planning process, that's really where I started to have these conversations with clients and maybe talking about the long-term care. So how I do that is, let's talk about data gathering. That, when you say that, that just kind of sounds just like, that sounds like something that you have to do like on your spring cleaning checklist or something. Like nobody wants to do that. So there was a former leader in the planning network that I'm involved in, XYPN, fee-for-service financial planning. There's about 2,000 advisors, and you got Michael Kitces, the guru, and Alan Moore as the co-founders. And Maddie Roach, she's worked with the company, the first employee. She just recently left, but tremendous leader there to take on new endeavors. And she said, let's reframe the data gathering phrase, and let's call it getting organized, right?
That's great.
Yeah. And she's also, I have to confess, like on her coaching calls, the group coaching calls with XYPN, Maddie gave me the second client avatar.
Oh.
Busy mommies.
Yeah.
That's what they are, right? And so they need help, like they're juggling the dishes and maybe a part-time gig or an Etsy or a full-time responsibilities, like my wife as a registered nurse with a fertility services company out in Connecticut. And so getting organized just sounds more relaxed. Like, when you have an opportunity, let's connect to Monarch Money, and that does I'm going to use the technical word, data aggregation process. But it's, with using Plaid, and you can connect your Bank of America or your Chase account. And that's a lot easier than downloading PDFs and printing out statements and then emailing them and attaching files and then, getting all those technical glitches.
Yeah. No, I love that. And is that your preference, that one? I have Copilot on my phone, which I did that because my son loves it. But I was just curious what you...
My wife and I have been terrible budgeters. We rank historically low on ESPN's all-time budgeting statistics or whatever, and so we have tried YNAB. You need a budget. I used to use Mint, and that's very backwards looking. So you're like, oh, okay, well we overspent $2,000, and so fail. And then you have to have that conversation with your spouse. Well, we need to tighten things up. And I heard you talking on the previous podcast with Wendy Wright about having these conversations of, okay, one spouse has all of the numbers and they have the financial acumen, and this other spouse has maybe a different intelligence, and so they're conflicting, and there's the kind of dominant, that, what do you call that? The dynamics, power dynamics going on there.
Yeah, it is power dynamics. I was just reading about that too. It's like, why do we fight about this stuff? It's because it's fighting over control, and but I find that really interesting. I'm not a good budgeter either. And a lot of, you look at a financial person and you think, oh, that person loves their budget, but you don't have to love your budget to be good with money. And you kind of do have to do it to some extent. But there are varying degrees of budgeting. I mean, I have worked with people who wanted to budget to the penny. I have never budgeted to the penny. I just couldn't handle it. Yeah. So, but it's just about knowing I mean, I like to say knowing how much it costs to be you. And you do kind of have to know that. So, yeah. So, anyway, I love what you're saying. I love the vulnerability about the budget.
I mean, to be a certified financial planner, you can even go bankrupt one time. But if you go bankrupt twice, I think that's a no-go at the station. So maybe I shouldn't focus on the lower limits and kind of aim high like the Air Force or whatever. But we're going to, budget. If you need help with budgeting, I can certainly help you. We'll use Monarch money. But don't, ask me about my personal budgeting practices or whatever, or, that.
Yeah. You're putting in a good effort, though. If you're talking to your wife about it, that's good. So, so let's talk about Bitcoin, because we never talk about Bitcoin on this show. And pretty much financial planners have not mentioned the word. So tell us your thoughts about it.
Yeah, how much time do we have, Michelle?
A little more. Not enough.
Not enough. So I believe Bitcoin is, hang in there, listeners, hang in, audience. It's going to get wonky, but it's a decentralized form of money. I lost them already. Okay, we're done. So it's digital gold is kind of an analogy, right? In the 1970s, we had Richard Nixon. He took us off the gold standard, and the dollar was kind of floating, and we had inflation. In that period of economic history, you were seeing stagflation.
Yeah.
And you were seeing a stagnant economy and rising inflation. And then Paul Volcker, the Treasury Secretary, came in and tried to get a handle on the rising inflation in the 80s. And so that was an interesting time period. And so Bitcoin came about right after the 2008 global financial collapse. And that was in October 2008, 2009-ish, and you can fact check that. And Satoshi Nakamoto is an anonymous person. He was in these crypto kind of anarchy kind of email rooms, but it was built on top of previous technology of eCash and a guy named Adam Bach and they experimented in it, and then it's basically just computer code, software, and X's and O's. And there are 21 million Bitcoin, and there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. So that's why it's scarce.
Okay.
So that's a big part, Michelle, of why it is increasing in value, because as a digital currency compared to other currencies, such as the pound or the ruble or the peso or the yuan, those currencies can be inflated. Right? And what does the government generally do, any global government, in times of an emergency?
You're asking me?
Yeah. Like we had in the 2020 pandemic, what did the presidential administration do? They
bailed people out.
They bailed people out. They printed more money.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're seeing higher inflation economically, is because when you increase the money supply, that decreases the value of the currency and raises the cost of goods and services. With Bitcoin, we now have a decentralized, permissionless, so that there's no other intermediaries, there's no banks, there's no financial institution. It's controlled throughout the universe on this decentralized global ledger, and it can't be manipulated. And so 21 million Bitcoin is 21 million Bitcoin, and now that's why you're seeing the price. It just hit last month an all-time high of 112,000 per Bitcoin.
Yeah, okay. Fascinating. So, most people out there are still wary of it. I mean, not most. I don't know the statistics really, but the people I know anyway.
I agree.
So, I mean, is it important to embrace it? Do you see that as being okay? Because then I hear statistics like, 1% to 2% of your portfolio should be in crypto. Is that?
Yeah. So again, it depends on each person, right, and their individual risk tolerance and their time horizon. And so let me take a step back to kind of qualify the conversation as well for our listeners from my perspective, right? And so that's why it's a privilege to be on the Money and You podcast to share my perspective, right? Because it's going to be unique and different from every other host or guest. And once we get into that freestyle perspective, you really hear some stuff. Or I think we've got another topic to talk about in just a second. That could
we better
keep the listeners on their toes. But I think this podcast is really a good bridge from the hardcore Bitcoiners that I listen to, like What Bitcoin Did, or Coin Stories with Natalie Brunell, or this other guy named Walker who does the Bitcoin podcast. These are the hardcore Bitcoin maximalists, right? They believe that Bitcoin is the revolution and the transformation. And while I do believe that it does have revolutionary potential, and it could become the global reserve currency, we're seeing the downgrade of the United States debt and the U.S. the strain on the U.S. economy and that the manufacturing and haul-out. But I think this podcast is a really good bridge to more of the mainstream audiences that really are not sure about where they get their information, and maybe they've read some things online on the internet about Bitcoin, or maybe even Wall Street Journal or Forbes. But some of those journalists are not really researched and technically heavy as well.
Yeah.
And so my opinion is that you can't be on zero. Okay, unless you're 85 years old, right? Then you have some other objectives and initiatives that you need to be preparing for. Or if you have a really low risk tolerance, right? And if you're holding equities and that makes you a little jumpy, then now as Bitcoin increases in market capitalization, and we're over, I say we're, but the Bitcoin network is over $2 trillion. Wow. $2 trillion in market cap. So it's not like a venture cap startup in Silicon Valley. And so I would argue that I think 1% to 5% is a mainstream range. Okay. But 0 is not an appropriate number at this point.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, and again, people who haven't studied it don't really know what to do, when to jump in. I mean, it's high right now, so people think, I don't know. And the predictability of the ups and downs, is there that like there is with equities? You can kind of pay attention to what's going on and predict that a little bit. But
so as we think about the market cycles and the volatility of the asset, it just depends on your perspective, because we're seeing, again, it depends on the U.S. economy, what's going to happen. We factor in AI. Are we going to I can't get away. It's inescapable, $36 trillion of U.S. government debt. That's just as Lynn Aldwin, who is an incredible economist, she wrote a book called Broken Money, and she is very neutral, very researched, and she has a meme, she has a phrase that says, "The train has left the station, folks." And so at 36 trillion, yes, Doge, I think Elon Musk just wrapped up his initiative with the government, not Dogecoin, but the Department of Government Efficiency, $200 billion. Okay, well, way to go, Elon. You did some good government trimming. But if you look, there's a guy named Nick Bhatia, and he has the Bitcoin Layer Substack and a podcast, very well researched, and he talks about the bond market, very nuanced, more technical than probably any of the majority of your listeners want to hear. But there are massive things going on in the bond market and government debt that that's just totally under the radar. And so we've got a big problem with $36 trillion of debt. So I think $100,000 is, I'd anticipate, I'm not going to make market predictions, but 200,000 is not out of the question. $1 million per Bitcoin is not out of the question. So these are the numbers, and I feel very confident and comfortable mentioning these numbers, because if you have a $2 trillion asset that is scarce, that is decentralized, that is using 256 secure hash algorithm like crypto technology that was based in the Department of Defense in the 1960s, that is like unbreakable, right? Then I think that's a pretty solid risk-reward asset. So at the end of the day, as we say in the Army, the bottom line up front is that Bitcoin, I would argue, at Exponential Advisors and other certified financial planners that are Bitcoin-friendly and Bitcoin-focused would say the same, if not take it further, is that Bitcoin is the best risk-reward asset out there.
Wow.
Full stop.
Wow. Okay.
Better than equities, certainly better than bonds, right, with inflation.
Yeah.
And so that's why the market opportunity for Exponential Advisors, for me to be patient and grow with sustainability and with credibility and integrity, rather than just kind of being like a, what do you call those, like slimy salesmen or whatever out there?
Yeah, that's what you call them. Yeah. It's fascinating. And this is a commentary, I guess, on the world of finance, because I have had a lot of guests who, they come on with their own perspective on what the best thing is. And oftentimes it's something they enjoy, they understand, they've played around with and had success with. Yeah. So I feel like the message, there's so many messages here, but I feel like I love what you're saying about Bitcoin, because that frankly was factual and research-based and new to this show. I learned a lot just in the short time you were talking.
Thank you.
But it's also a comfort level and, like you say, your risk tolerance, but also what you can enjoy. And I feel like people, I don't know how, people need to find their area of personal finance that they can dig into. And so you've obviously been able to understand this and get into it enough to feel confident and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I guess, for people out there are many options. I mean, which is a good thing. It's just a matter of figuring it out. So.
Yeah, it could be real estate. There's all different types of investments out there. And so at the end of the day, yes, Bitcoin is a solid risk-reward asset. It has, solid potential and so on and so forth. And we haven't even gone into, like, you can self-custody it. You don't even have to hold it at an exchange.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's, and so that maybe, for another time, maybe you could have me back. Michelle, I'd love to be back here and do some Bitcoin promotion. But it's what I'm passionate about. So, but I mean, I would tell customers, my clients at Edward Jones, like, yeah, you can make 10% returns on the stock market, but if you invest in real estate, like, those are different numbers, right? If you do it well. And so then there are different risks as well. So it just depends. There's lots of different avenues for investments.
Yeah. And I think part of that makes it fun. It's like a project that you can learn, you can play with, you can, and in the future, hopefully you will earn money from it as well. So
hopefully.
So, okay. Because we, I do like to talk about your relationship with money, which we have been. And part of that is transformation. And you've just been on, this is a whole different avenue that we've never touched on as well, but you've been on a journey recently to help yourself and other people transform. And I found that fascinating. And, we talked for a minute about how that would impact your money life as well. So if you want to share that.
Yeah. Well, is it okay to cry in your show? I mean, it's very transformative.
Anything goes here.
I wish I could cry more. We had some veterans on this trip.
We have that in common, by the way.
Yeah.
I have a lot of trouble with crying, and so I went to therapy for a long time, and she would be so happy when I would cry, because it just wouldn't happen. I don't know, I have a weird crying issue, so I can relate to what you're saying.
I can see the emotion now in your eyes. It's so powerful.
Trying to learn how to do it better.
I wish. I'm starting to come on now. Yeah, I mean, it's really opened me up, Michelle, and I thank you for this gift to share my brief experiences. I went with a nonprofit organization called the Heroic Hearts Project, and they are a nonprofit in New York, founded by an Army Ranger named Jesse Gold. And I think there was like a movie or a documentary that explored these veterans for Heroic Hearts, taking them to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and doing a ceremonial retreat. And so Heroic Hearts took me and a dozen or so veterans to Tarapoto, Peru. And so we flew into Lima last month, and there was a lot of integration and a lot of preparation. And we had our favorite coach. His name is Diego from San Diego. So Diego, San Diego, shout out to you, man. Thank you for helping me stay sane and keeping us in check on our psychedelic retreat. And so in the retreat, we did 3 ceremonial sessions of ayahuasca. So let's take a quick step back and talk about trauma and how that can impact your life and your relationship to money. And so I was raised in Houston, Texas, and had an abusive, alcoholic father, emotional and verbal. stepfather, excuse me, and a lot of trauma even going into the Army, unfortunately. So it's taken me a lot of hard work to get to where I'm at. Counseling and yoga and healthy living and good relationships and the faith, vibrant spiritual community. Those things really helped me, but they didn't get me over the hump. And so it's always a holistic, integrative plan. And so the antidepressants that I was taking, I've taken 2 in my time, and they would just make you feel like a zombie, and you're just kind of getting depressed. Maybe that's why I can't budget that good. I'll just blame it on the antidepressants or whatever. It's like on sertraline or Zoloft or Paxil. But so then I went to the Army, and this could be, I'm going to keep it brief, hit the high points. Like basic training, I had a college degree, and the drill sergeant, he saw me as a specialist, so I was E4 in rank, above the privates and private first class. And he said, Specialist Brooks, post. Drill sergeant, if you're listening to this, drill sergeant, I'm still not so pleased. Very hot about this. About to get a little hot up in the studio. And he says, I said, yes, drill sergeant. And he says, do you have a college degree, Brooks? And he looked at me with this round brown hat, and I said, yes, yeah. He said, you say yes, drill sergeant. This is the United States Army. He says, do you have a college degree? You think you're effing smarter than me? He says, you're nothing. You do push-ups. And so that was my introduction at Fort Benning, Georgia, to the United States Army. And then I found out that this was only the second class in 2004 where the drill sergeants couldn't put their hands on you.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, I had no idea what I was getting into. So that was a start. They throw your bags up the bus and they're blowing the whistles, and it's just kind of really Willy Wonka. And so then I got stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington, and just really hardcore unit that came back from Iraq. This is Operation Iraqi Freedom Time. Then I deployed. Soldiers got killed, and during General Petraeus' surge operations, we were in Mosul. Just a lot of trauma, Michelle. Just really tough. And that's another part of kind of why I kind of store those emotions, especially a lot of Army veterans. It's a protective mechanism.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, got married, went on another deployment as a chaplain, and then just got diagnosed with PTSD. And I won't tell you that this story is very humorous with my family. And I was like, hey, I got PTSD. And we could have told you that a long time ago. I said, why didn't you tell me? Because you couldn't handle it. So I was like, well, here we go again. So I go on this retreat, and there is a maloca. Okay, so there I am in Tarapoto, Peru, in the Amazon jungle, and we take either a small, medium, or large, like a shot glass, double shot, or the beaker, the science beaker. And so we start off small, and in that first session, I had a delay. It didn't really kick in. And there's 2 shipibos, okay? They're like the healers. Okay. And they're singing these songs for 4 hours straight. Each person gets like an individualized healing song. Oh, wow. And they're smoking mapachos, like this tobacco. And it did a neurologic reset. I mean, I had visual patterns, and I was very angry the first night. I was like, F this and F that and F my... And I'm looking from a detached perspective like, man, you're an angry dude, man. What's going on? So the plant medicine was healing and working on those issues that I was struggling with, the anger and everything. And so it was so powerful, Michelle. And what it did is it calmed my central nervous system. So where I don't have that fight or flight. And I came home and listened to this. These are the 2 things that I told my family. And I won't go into the details. The second night was good. I had the beaker shot, the triple shot of espresso. They didn't like the Starbucks terms that I used, the tall, grande, or venti or whatever, but it was really nasty. Think of like drinking brown, tar, liquidy stuff from a vine. But I told my wife, I said, we'll snuggle more. We'll snuggle more. I know to give her that emotional comfort and savings and security. And then I told my wild child, Micah, I said, Micah, Daddy just got home from a retreat. He's doing better. No more spanking. Oh. And you should have seen his eyes. He was like, because he's our cowboy wild guy. And so he was just, and it's so special. Those were the things that my parenting and lifestyle have evolved. And tying it back to money, here are the two biggest crushers of financial, and you know this, but divorce and health issues, right? Divorce and health issues. And so you can make a lot of money, but if you don't necessarily have like a long-term care plan, the average cost of a semi-private nursing care home annually in Texas is $100,000. So hope you did well on your Vanguard S&P 500 index fund or whatever. So those were my experiences, very profound psychedelics experiences. It's going to make me a human being that is more present, that is more compassionate, and you can't put a price on that.
No, absolutely not.
Is more empathetic.
And the way you are in your relationships that this is helping to heal is also the way you are with money. I mean, it's also a relationship. So if you fly off the handle and, get upset about things or whatever the emotional reaction, you're reacting that way, not you, but people toward money as well. And so the best decisions aren't made or bad decisions are made. I mean, people are making decisions with this dysregulated nervous system. I mean, that goes for all of us. I mean, so that awareness when you're, what space you're in, how is your nervous system before you go and do anything with your money, it becomes really important. So, well, that's fascinating, and congratulations for doing that. It's, I have friends who do it. I personally have not been brave enough, but very, very interesting to hear about the transformation.
Yeah, so. It's a whole new world.
He's gonna sing, so Tony.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that instrumental.
Should we rap with a rap?
Yeah, we can go. They call me in the Army Reserve, Tony, the rapping chaplain.
Well,
so do you have an instrumental?
I think while you look, I'm gonna thank you in advance for coming on the show. There's so much more to talk about. It really did feel like 2 seconds worth of time, but I let people know how to reach you, by the way.
Would love to. And so Exponential Advisors, you can find us on our website, and that is exponentialadvisors.net. And for the listeners out there, we are in the process of changing the blog page, so it'll be exponentialadvisors.net/media, and I'll have some guest podcasts there and some short form videos that'll be launching. And then I'm transitioning, so I'm not going to send you anywhere else, just to the website, exponentialadvisors.net. I'm transitioning, Michelle, from Substack and just really going to focus on a newsletter and an email. Substack has got a lot of good things going on, but there's also, I found some limitations there. So we all, you evolve in your business practices.
You evolve, but that old-fashioned blogging newsletter thing never seems to go away. So
So well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, so interesting. And I loved everything you talked about. So thank you so much. All right, listeners, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show with Joshua. He was quite a terrific guest and lots to take in, lots to enjoy. So I would listen to that one a couple of times. And, if you haven't thought about Bitcoin before, I personally haven't given it all that much thought. I'm going to rethink a little bit here. And, I love the variety of personalities out there in the financial world as well. So know that you can make those choices of who should be on your financial team from your heart and your gut. Like, who do you work with well? Because that's another aspect of building a good financial life, is having a good team that you can connect with, that you can talk to, and who has your back. So thank you so much for listening, and please give us a rating and a review. We love that too. If you can give us a 5-star rating, that really helps us bring great guests like Joshua onto the show. And you can find me at limitfreelife.com. So thanks so much. We'll see you next week.